Dibrig tú go díon nó chánig tú go dtí an chathair seo, fuair his neart taithí agus d'urbar de chud scileanna. I ngacháte éigean tú, fecinn tú rud éige na chabhraigh tú a thógáil, ach inis tá tú ag féchant ar an todhchaí, agus beidir go bhfuil tú ag smaoinemh ar an áit as a dagan tú. In éireann, tastaíonn pleanálathe, siúnéirí, ploméirí, díanadóirí, inaltóirí, altíirí, banistóirí láithreáin agus níos móhain. Tastaíonn túhain, le do chud scileanna agus taithí go léir, chun cabhrúlinn na mílte tithe a thógáil. Tá an domhan tóga agat, a níos tar arás agus tógan teach a thóg tú. Tuile eolais ag gov.ie/Building Ireland. Teachtareacht ó rialtas na hÉireann.
This episode is brought to you by Paranormal Playback, a new podcast where hosts Caragh, Mel and Laura recap the spooky and entertaining world of paranormal reality TV. Each week they take a fresh look at popular shows like Ghost Adventures and Kindred Spirits, blending humour with insight as they pull apart what's happening on screen. The three of them are a mix of believers and skeptics, which makes for really fun conversations, sometimes leaning into mystery, other times asking the questions viewers might be thinking themselves. With their background in creative production, they know how these shows are put together, so they're great at pointing out the moments that feel real versus the ones that might be more for the cameras. And their segment, This Old Haunt, digs into the true crime side of paranormal investigations, separating fact from fiction. With Halloween coming up, it's the perfect time to add something spooky, funny and a little addictive to your playlist. For even more spooky, ghostly, paranormal content with a humorous spin, go check out Paranormal Playback. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Scary. If you're new here, my name is Will and each week I narrate your paranormal experiences as well as some famous paranormal cases along the way. And don't forget, if you have your own paranormal experience that you'd like me to narrate on the show, you can send it to scaryaparanormalpodcast@gmail.com and it just might get made into a future episode. As always, before we get into this week's episode, I need to say a special thank you to our new Patreon subscribers. We've had a record amount this week, and they are Nikki Fraser, Kirsty Berry, Crystal Moss, Niamh Morrigan, Claire and Sam, Laura Irwin, Martin, Mary MacLeod, Amanda, William Curse, Cara O'Sullivan, Chris Bakahi, Alice, Christina Locke, Tracy Orr, and M.K. Cook. Thank you so much for signing up to the show's Patreon and welcome to the Patreon family. And if this is something you're interested in, you can find the link in this episode's show notes where you can gain access to ad-free main episodes as well as exclusive scary episodes. But now, let's get into our next paranormal encounter. My experience happened in 2008. At that time, my partner and I had started to build a house in Southern Ireland. We have 2 young boys, and so to save money, we decided to move into a cottage next to the site where we were building. The cottage was my father's home place, and it's over 200 years old. It had remained in the family through generations, but spent about 10 years outside the family when a relative sold it. In this time, it had been renovated, a new extension had been put on consisting of a new kitchen and a new bedroom. My dad eventually bought it back, and we moved in mid-2009. There was a lot of family history in the house, with my uncle dying there at the age of 33, and my grandmother had lost a number of children early on in her marriage there. The layout of the cottage was when you went in the front door, and to the left there was a kitchen, open plan. And to the right was a corridor up to the new bedroom and one to the old bedroom. The sitting room was 2 steps down off the hallway, and to the back of that was another lower bedroom, the place where my uncle died. I remember the first night we moved in. I was on my own with the children, and my partner was working a night shift. So I went to bed in the old bedroom, and the boys were across the way in the new bedroom. And I left both bedroom doors open to keep an eye on them. At about 3 a.m, I woke to the sound of cabinets opening and drawers slamming shut. At first it was distant, but then sharper and closer. The kind of noise that leaves no room for doubt. It wasn't the house creaking, it wasn't pipes. It was someone or something going through the kitchen. As you can imagine, the fear gripped me immediately. We lived deep in the countryside with nothing but fields around us and a handful of elderly neighbours scattered down the road. And I knew it was my partner or the children. I remember peeking across the hall, holding my breath, and I saw them both sound asleep in their beds. And that's when it hit me, I guess. What if it was a burglar? And I froze, running every possible option in my head, with my body refusing to move. And then silence. But the quiet didn't last long. Moments later, I heard footsteps in the hallway. These slow, deliberate, heavy, as if they belonged to somebody elderly, dragging with each step across the floor. And I knew immediately that they were barefoot. The way that the soles slid against the wood was unmistakable. It's not a long hallway. It's about 10 steps, maybe less from start to end. And I remember pulling the duvet up to my face, just leaving my eyes uncovered, just waiting for a figure to appear in the doorway. So I'm there with my heart hammering so loud, I thought it would give me away. But then these footsteps stopped, and then nothing. No figure arrived at the door, no explanation, just silence. Honestly, I couldn't bring myself to get up. I stayed in that bed terrified until my partner came home hours later, and only then did I search the house. Everything was exactly as it should be. Nothing was touched, nothing was out of place. And I told them what happened. I could see in their eyes that they thought I had imagined it, but I knew better. And that wasn't the only thing. The door to the downstairs bedroom never stayed shut. You could close it firmly, hear the latch sometimes click into place, but the moment you walked away, it would swing wide open again. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't pressure from another door. It only happened when the room was left alone, never when you were inside. On another occasion during the day, we were getting ready for my son's birthday party. We'd rented out a bouncy castle and told guests to arrive at 3 o'clock. At around 1 o'clock, while my partner and I were in the kitchen, we heard children laughing outside. Very clear, cheerful voices. And I was annoyed that they were 2 hours early. We both heard it. I even caught sight of a young girl running across the garden next door. Only the house next door was my brother's, and he hadn't moved in yet, and he didn't have any daughters. So I went outside to meet whoever had arrived, but the garden was empty. No children, no car in the driveway, nothing. After that, I stopped being surprised. I'd unlock my car to get into it, and as I approach it, it would lock by itself again. I'd often see a figure pass by the window out of the corner of my eye, but yet there was no one around. A lady at work had visited a medium, and I decided to get her number and ask her to visit the house. I didn't tell her anything really of what was going on, just that a few of us wanted private readings. So she came one evening and I met with her first. And she said she felt there was a lot of happy spirits in the house and that they had been making themselves known. Not to frighten me, but to show me that they were happy that a family had moved back in. She also told me that we were going to have a baby girl the next year, and she could see that she had auburn hair. And she was right. And to note that I am blonde and none of us have auburn hair. She said that the area was full of child spirits that had passed during famine times, and they meant no harm. There was never anything after that, certainly not the first night antics anyway. Maybe it stopped, or maybe I just wasn't frightened anymore. But it all just seemed to fade away. And as for the place now, another relative moved in after me, and she says that she hasn't experienced anything, so who knows. Thank you, Caragh, for sending in your paranormal encounter.
It's third down.
Did you see the game last night? Of course you did, because you used Instacart to do your grocery restock. Plus, you got snacks for the game, all without missing a single play. And that's on multitasking. So we're not saying that Instacart is a hack for game day, but it might be the ultimate play this football season. Enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply. For 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants. Instacart. We're here.
Don't raise your voice to prove you're right. Focus your mind with every word of irrefutable fact you can find. Because conviction is the calm that comes when you know that you really do know. People who read the Financial Times know that they can shape their own perspectives with confidence because their viewpoints are informed by genuinely unbiased journalism. Clarity and conviction. Source FT. Subscribe to the Financial Times at ft.com/sourceft.
Dibrig tú go díon nó chánig tú go dtí an chathair seo, fuair his neart taithí agus d'urber de chud scileanna. I ngacháte éigean tú, fecinn tú rud éigean a chabhraigh tú a thógáil, ach inis tá tú ag féchant ar an todhchaí, agus beidir go bhfuil tú ag smaoinemh ar an áit as a dagan tú. In éireann, tastaíonn pleanálathe, siúnéirí, ploméirí, díanadóirí, inaltóirí, altíirí, banistóirí láithreáin agus níos móhain. Tastaíonn túhain, le do chud scileanna agus taithí go léir, chun cabhrúlinn na mílte tithe a thógáil. Tá an domhan tóga agat, a níos tar arás agus tógan teach a thóg tú. Tuile eolais ag gov.ie/Building Ireland. Teachtareacht ó Rialtas na hÉireann.
Fall is all about cozy comforts, but when you're prioritizing your health, it's easy to feel like you're missing out. With Hero Bread, you can enjoy all your fall favorites because they're made with Hero Bread sliced bread loaves, tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls, and more. Try their all-new Hero Noodles with 12 grams of protein and just 80 calories. So skip replacing every carb with cauliflower and indulge in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner time favorites while still hitting your goals. From breakfast bagels and meal prepped enchiladas to mouth-watering burgers and cheesy noodles. You won't believe Hero Bread's options have 0 to 5 grams net carbs and are high fiber from the taste and texture. They've even got small batch drops of indulgent favorites like the popular Hero Croissant. And right now, Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Go to hero.co and use code FALL25 at checkout. That's fall25 at hero.co. All figures are per serving of Hero Bread. Contains 2 to 18 grams of fat per serving. See the product nutrition panels on hero.co for more information.
And now, let's get into our next. I had my very first encounter at a very young age, and if I'm honest, I say encounter, but there is a possibility that this was actually a dream. You decide. For me, it was very real, and even to this day I remember every detail. It was close to Halloween, and there was a very scary cartoon special on that I probably shouldn't have been watching at my young age. And after it was over, I went to play in my playroom, and I ended up falling asleep on the couch that I had in there. After I'd been asleep for a while, I was awakened by someone tapping me on my back. I turned around thinking that it was my mother or father telling me to wake up and go to my bedroom, but when I turned around, I saw that it was this cartoon character that I saw on that show from earlier. He was kneeling down, smiling a very creepy smile at me and saying something that I couldn't quite understand. Now, I might have been a little kid, but I swear I was awake by this time, and it was very real and really standing there smiling at me. I just remember jumping up and running to my mother's room and jumped in the bed with her hiding under the covers. I told her what happened, insisting that he was in the room, and I must have been pretty convincing because she actually got up and looked in my playroom and saw nothing. Nothing else like that happened after that until years later. Fast forward to when I was in 6th grade. I'd made friends with a girl named Carla that had lived a couple of streets over from me. We had been hanging out quite a bit when she invited me to spend the night at her house. While we were in my room getting my stuff together to bring to her house, she said that she had something to tell me. She said that she hoped this wouldn't change anything, but she wanted to let me know that her house was haunted. And quite honestly, I thought she was joking and continued to get my stuff together. We got to Carla's house and we had a nice dinner with her parents and sister, and then walked to a nearby store to get some snacks for later. When we returned to the house, her sister was leaving to go to her late shift job. After about an hour or two, her parents came in to tell us that they were going out for a couple of hours, and they left. So we did whatever kids do at that age and got tired, and then decided to go to bed. I remember laying there in the dark talking and giggling like you do at that age. I remember during a short pause in the conversation, we heard what sounded like very distinct footsteps outside her door in the hallway. And I grabbed her arm and asked if she had heard what I was hearing. And she did, and she said, "I told you." I remember saying something like, "Okay, but your parents or your sister must have come home early, no?" And she said no, and that we would have heard them come in and that this happens a lot. And I just remember laying there stiffly in the dark with the hair standing up on the back of my neck, terrified. And we continued to listen to the footsteps going back and forth. And then they came into the room. And they seemed to walk right up to the bed. This was so loud that I fully expected someone or something to reach out and grab us in the pitch black of the room. But it never happened. And then everything was quiet again. After a bit, Carla had even fallen asleep, but I was wide awake. Sometime later, I remember sitting there rigidly in bed, and I heard her parents come home and feeling this great sense of relief. And I was even able to fall asleep, feeling a lot more secure as I listened to her parents talking quietly in the living room. In the morning, Carla and I talked again about these footsteps, and she let me know that she thought it was her uncle who passed away. She said she was very close to him and even told me about a seance that she and her cousins had done there in the house to try and reach him. She said that it was soon after this seance that the footsteps started. And I wish I had thought to ask, and maybe I even did ask if anything else happened in the house, but if it did and she told me, unfortunately, I can't remember. These two incidences are what piqued my interest in the paranormal for sure, and I became a little obsessed with paranormal stories and books that detailed encounters that people have had. I hadn't really had any more encounters until many years later when I moved into my first apartment. In my early 20s, I moved into my first apartment with my boyfriend at the time that was in an old 4-family house in East Hartford, Connecticut that was built in 1827. On the evening of moving day, we fell into bed exhausted from all the moving and getting everything set up. We fell asleep pretty quickly, but eventually we were woken up to the sound of our dog uttering this low growl. And we thought maybe since none of us were familiar with the noises in this new house, this was what was making her nervous. So we listened closely and were very surprised to hear footsteps walking around the living room. So I told my boyfriend that he had to go and check it out, and he was actually too scared to go look. Finally, he and my dog went out there and found that there was no one there. Once they came back and got into bed, it was quiet for the rest of the night. After this night, the footsteps happened every once in a while and then seemed to stop altogether. Going forward, the only strange things that happened was a strong feeling of being watched most of the time. We never saw anything, but a lot of the time we just had this feeling that we weren't alone, but it didn't feel scary for some reason. After about a year of living there, there was a pretty heavy-duty hurricane and the power was out in the entire house. The neighbours living in 3 other apartments ended up going to stay with friends and relatives, and we were the only ones alone in the house. Obviously it was super quiet since without electricity we couldn't even watch TV or listen to music. We had candles lit and were sitting in the living room just talking quietly. And all of a sudden we heard what sounded like a woman crying. So we both look at each other, surprised, since we knew no one else was in this house. And this went on for a while. We started trying to find where the sounds were coming from, and assuming that somebody must have returned to the house, and maybe we could hear them because the house was just so silent. Upon checking, we realised that no one else was there, and that the sound was coming from the attic. So after a lot of convincing, I finally got my boyfriend to walk out into the hallway by the front entrance where the attic hatch door in the ceiling was. We quietly pulled down the door, and as soon as the door was fully opened, the crying stopped. So, beyond scared at this point, my boyfriend squinted into the dark and took the flashlight I handed him and looked around, shining the light all around and in every corner of the attic. Nothing out of the ordinary was to be seen. So we quickly closed the door and put the ladder away and went back into our apartment. And I just remember sitting there in silence, trying to process what had happened, and decided to go to my parents' house to spend the rest of the night. In the morning, we returned home where nothing else happened for a while. So a couple of months later, my boyfriend and I decided that things between us weren't great and that he should move out, leaving my dog and myself living there alone. And honestly, things were great and we were happy. Things were uneventful and life went on. Sometime later, one of my friends needed to get out of her apartment and came to stay with me while she was in between apartments. She worked at night bartending and I worked my office job during the day. One weekend day, about a week or two, she asked me if I had ever felt anything in the house. I asked what she meant, and she said that sometimes things felt different. So I asked her to be more specific, and she said that sometimes she felt like she was being watched. She said that she would turn around, fully expecting me or the dog to be standing there, but there was never anyone there. And that even though it was a little unnerving, it didn't feel bad or scary. So I let her know that I knew exactly what she was talking about, and I felt it too from time to time. And here's where things get weird. We had gone out to where she bartended and watched a band that was playing there. We had a couple of drinks and eventually went home. Watching TV, I fell asleep on the couch and she went to bed. All was quiet. In the morning, we decided to go out for breakfast. While we were there, she told me that something had woken her up in the middle of the night. And she saw 3 lumberjacks standing at the end of her bed. She said it was the only way she could think of to describe them. She said they were big, strong-looking men with clothes like, well, lumberjacks. She said they were completely silent, and then they just faded away. She said that she was too scared to get up or move, and I guess she thought that she would just put her head under the blankets and hope that they wouldn't come back. A couple of nights later, I was outside with my dog in the yard. We started to walk back in, and when we got to the landing of the stairs to walk up, she started doing that same low growl and wouldn't go up the stairs. So I walked in front of her and told her to come, but she wouldn't, and just continued to stare up the stairwell, all stiff and growling. I started walking up the stairs thinking that she would follow me, As I looked back to see if she was coming, I turned back around and saw someone sitting on the stairs in front of me. The person was almost see-through, and I couldn't see what they were wearing or what they looked like. It was almost like a mist in a very identifiable shape of a person. And I just watched in shock. They started to just slowly dissipate, and then they were completely gone. Again, I still didn't have a bad feeling about it. I was definitely scared and confused, but it just wasn't a bad feeling, if that makes sense. A couple of weeks later, my friend moved out and got her own place. One night I was in my kitchen cleaning up from dinner, and I walked by the window and noticed that the light inside my car was on, so I grabbed my keys and went out to shut it off. So I came back up and started to clean the kitchen again, and felt like I was being watched. It was really strong, stronger than usual, and I tried to ignore it. And when I walked by the window, I noticed that the light in my car was on again. So again, I grabbed my keys and went out there to shut it off and came back up. Same feeling of being watched in the house, this time while watching TV. I remember looking at the window one last time as I was getting ready for bed, and the damn light in my car was on again. This time I actually just let it stay on because I started to feel like someone or something was messing with me. Dead battery in the morning be damned. Although somehow my battery wasn't dead in the morning. The next thing that happened was a friend of mine was staying over with me when my boyfriend, who lived in Massachusetts, called and really wanted me to come over. My friend said for me to just go, and she would stay and hang out with the dog and watch TV and then go to bed. When I got home the next day, she told me that she woke up abruptly in the middle of the night and felt like someone was holding her down, and she was terrified. And we had no clue as to why that would happen. Another time, a couple of friends were over and we sat in the living room talking. The light in the bedroom started turning on and off over and over. I walked in there and flicked the switch on and off and put it in the off position, and then went back out to my friends. The minute I sit back down, the lights went on and off a couple more times and then eventually stopped. One time my boyfriend was staying over, and a couple that we hung out with all the time happened to be staying over as well. They were sleeping out in the living room and said that in the middle of the night my bedroom door opened and my dog walked out and headed to the kitchen, and the door closed behind her. They heard her get a drink of water and watched her walk back to the bedroom and stood outside the door for a minute when the door opened, and she went back in and the door shut quietly behind her again. Neither my boyfriend or I saw any of that. We must have slept right through it, but our friends were sufficiently freaked out and insist that it happened. Another time, the girl half of that couple and I were preparing to go out for a girls' night. She was getting annoyed with me because I was taking a long time getting ready, so she opened the door to go outside and wait for me. However, the second she opened it, I heard her slam it shut, and she came running over to the room that I was in. She was very visibly shaken, and I asked her what had happened. She said that when she opened the door, she immediately saw something. She was so freaked out that she couldn't even tell me what she saw. For years and years, she would never tell me what she saw that night. I finally got it out of her some 20 years later. She said that she saw what she could only describe as a big, round, white face. She said that it sort of looked like an old man, but she couldn't really describe it, and it wasn't connected to anything. She still gets scared today whenever we talk about it. Thank you to Laura for sending in her paranormal experiences. That is one hell of a haunted house, and I have mixed feelings. I'm kind of jealous. Honestly, part of me wants to have a thoroughly haunted house, and then another part of me says you would be terrified, Will, and that is correct. I would be. As always, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to tell a friend, and also don't forget to hit that follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening, and join me next time for another episode of Scary.
Hey folks, it's Mark Marin from WTF. Today I want to talk to you about Boost Mobile, offering reliable nationwide coverage backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Love your service or get your money back, no questions asked. Boost Mobile offers the coverage, network speed, and service you're used to, but at more affordable prices. Why pay more if you don't have to? You can get an unlimited plan for $25 a month that will never increase in price, ever. No price hikes, no multi-line requirements, no stress. Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store or find them online at boostmobile.com. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 per month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
You've worked hard since you arrived in the city, gained loads of experience, developed your skills. Everywhere you look, you see something you helped build. But now, you're looking to the future. And maybe you're thinking about where you come from. In Ireland, we need planners, carpenters, plumbers, roofers, engineers, architects, site managers, and more. We need you, with all your skills and knowledge, to help us build thousands of homes. You've built the world. Now come back and build the home that built you. For more information, visit gov.ie/Building Ireland. Brought to you by the Government of Ireland.
If your small business is booming and ready to expand, you might say something like,
"It's happening!
Booyah! Yeah! Crushed it. But if you need someone who can actually help protect your growing business, just say,
like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
And just like that, your State Farm agent can help you get the coverage you need for your new space. For your small business insurance needs, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.